Today on our 2018 GMC Sierra 3500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the B&W Turnoverball Underbed Gooseneck trailer hitch with a custom installation kit. This is what our hitch is going to look like once it's installed. Now, since this is an underbed design, all of our main components are going to live here underneath our truck bed. So what that means is when we're not using our hitch, we're going to have full bed access. Our hitch isn't going to take up any space up top. And one of the things I really like about this hitch is that it can also be used as a fifth wheel, using the B&W fifth wheel companion. So within minutes, you can go from a gooseneck, hook up your B&W fifth wheel companion, and you're ready to hit the road. Now, compared to some of the other hitches, one of the things I noticed about this one right off the bat is how well it's constructed. You're going to be able to tell right away that it's heavy duty and well built. Another way I could tell was the handle. Some of the other hitches' handles are kind of difficult to get in and out, hang up, and fight you a little bit. Well, the B&W one here, it's very easy to use, there's no struggle, and it works flawlessly. And the way your handle works is whenever you're ready to remove your ball, you just pull it out, turn it to the left a little bit, and it'll lock in place. Then you can take your ball out or put your ball in, and say if your ball's in now, simply pull it back a little bit, turn it, and release it back. And since the ball's shank has a square design and holes on all four sides, all you're going to have to do is drop it in and set the handle. You're not going to have to worry about it rotating and lining the holes up. Now, the size of the ball is going to be 2 5/16 of an inch, and it's going to have a 30,000 pound maximum gross towing weight. So that's going to be the amount of weight pulling on our hitch. So that's the weight of your trailer plus anything you might have on it. It's also going to have a 7,500 pound vertical load limit, which will be the amount of weight pushing down. Now, keep in mind, it is always a good idea to check with your truck's owner's manual to make sure you can pull that much weight. But when you're not using it, since the ball can be flipped over and stored in the hitch itself, you're not going to have to worry about losing it or keeping it inside of the cab of your truck. We're also going to have 2 safety chain loops, one on each side, which are spring-loaded. That way when you need them, you lift up and hook on, and when you're done, they're going to sit nice and flush against our bed. Now, one of the things I would recommend is some gooseneck or fifth wheel wiring. And that's a plug that's going to be mounted here in this area and the bed of our truck. And that's going to eliminate the need to drape a wire over our tailgate. Now, if you happen to have other components, they do make adapters that allow them to work with this B&W hitch. So check etrailer.com for your specific needs. Now, in my experience, the B&W hitches fit nicely and go together without a whole lot of problems. And many of our customers feel the same way. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and install it together now. To begin our installation, we're going to need to take some measurements here in the bed of our truck to find where we need to drill our hole. Now, you can find those exact measurements in your instructions. Just one thing I do want to point out, whenever you measure, you want to be sure to measure from the edge of the bed and not the tailgate. Now, I went ahead and measured and found where I need to drill. Now, I do want to point out, before you do any drilling, it is a good idea to go underneath the truck and make sure that there's nothing of importance underneath. That way we don't accidentally damage it. So I'm going to start by drilling a pilot hole. Then I will enlarge it using a hole saw. Now, the trick to the hole saw is you want to use high speed and low pressure. With our hole drilled, now we can use a vacuum to clean up our mess. And I like to use a little bit of clear spray paint just to help protect the bare metal that's exposed from any rust or corrosion. Now, here underneath the truck, I went ahead and removed our spare tire just to give us a little more room to work. Now we're going to need to remove this heat shield. Now it's going to be held in place by 4 13mm bolts. And there's going to be one here on top of this cross tube, in front of it on this cross tube, and then there's going to be two on our frame rail. Now we can just take our heat shield, pull it down from under the truck, and set it off to the side. Now over here in the passenger side wheel well, we're going to need to notch part of our body to get enough clearance to get our cross members through. Now there's a diagram and instructions that I followed, and it'll look something like this. To get this cut, I'm just going to use a Dremel tool. With our notch cut out, it's a good idea to cover that bare metal with some spray paint. So now we can take our front cross member and slide that in place over our frame rails. Now how this is going to work is at this edge of our angle, this is going to face towards the back of the truck. So it'll sit in here like this. So with this being the driver's side, there is one thing that we're going to do before we slide it in. What I'm going to do is take one of the 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolts and put that in the second hole. So we'll come in from the back. And then we're going to take the rubber O-ring that's provided with our kit, work that over the bolt, and that'll hold that bolt in place and make installation here in a moment a little bit easier. So once we have that in place, we'll take our angle and work it underneath our bed through that notch that we made. We'll get all the way across to the other side. And we're going to try to scoot it about 4 to 6 inches in front of the hole that we drilled in our bed. Now we can take our rear cross member and put that in place. But before we do that, since this is powder coated and it does have threaded holes, it's a good idea to grab one of your bolts and run them through every one of the holes, just to make sure that we can thread them in by hand and we're not going to have to fight it once we're up underneath the truck. And I do want to point out too, all of our threaded holes are going to be offset on the bar, and what I mean by that is they're not going to be in the dead center. So we're going to want the holes closest to the truck frame when we put it in there. So this portion here, this will be sitting down on our truck frame. So we take it and slide it in place over to the other side of our frame. And once we have it in place, you can stand it straight up. And if you're having a little trouble doing it like I am here, we can go underneath and I can show you a trick to make it easier. You can grab a wrench, get around the bar, and use this for leverage. So you can flip it in that position. Now with an extra set of hands, we can lift our center section into place. And I do want to point out, this is going to be offset here. As you can see, it's closer to one edge. And you're going to want the side that's closest to the edge facing towards the back of the truck. Now to secure our center section, we're going to attach it to the front cross rail. We're going to take a 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolt and slide it from the front to the back. And on the other side, we're going to put on a split lock washer and a hex nut. Now we're going to get all these just hand tight for now. Now what we can do is make sure the hole in our hitch is lined up with the hole in the bed of our truck. And once we verified it is, we could take our rear cross member, slide that up flat against our hitch, and loosely secure it. Now what I'm going to do is take the 1/2 inch by 2 inch bolt, and I'm going to put a split lock washer over it, followed by a flat washer. And I'm going to thread this bolt from the front of the truck to the back. So this is what all our hardware is going to look like once it's installed. And at this point, you don't want to tighten anything down. You just want to make sure that it's hand tight. Now we can take our side plate and get these installed. Now we're on the passenger side, and these plates are different from one another, so you want to make sure you have the right one. And the way you can identify that you have the right one is that the thinner portion of our plate will face towards the rear of the truck. So what we're going to do is take our plate, push it against the frame, and you want to make sure that our side plate fits up in between our cross rails. Kind of work that in there. And the holes in our plate will line up with some factory well nuts in the frame. And that's one of the ways we're going to secure the plate to the truck. To do that, we're going to take the large bolt, a split lock washer, followed by a flat washer, and get that threaded in, just hand tight for now. And I'm going to use that same hardware setup for the hole here towards the back. To secure our side plate on our frame here to our cross rails, for the one closest to the front of the truck, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch bolt and slide it from the front to the back. Then on the other side, I'm going to put on a flat washer, a split lock washer, and a nut. And for this one, we're going to use that same setup with the exception of a nut since our rear cross member is threaded. Take a bolt, split lock washer, my flat washer, and over here on the driver's side, it's set up the exact same way. So you just repeat that same process. So with everything in place, we can now tighten down our center section bolts. You want to make sure to do our center section bolts first. With our center section bolts tightened down, we can come over here to the side plates. Now each side plate, we're going to tighten down the larger bolts that is going into the frame first. And now we can move up to the 1/2 inch bolts up here. Now we can use a torque wrench to torque all of our hardware down to the specification found in our instructions. Now you want to be sure and use that same tightening sequence that we just did. Now here underneath the truck, we can install our handle to our center section. So on the driver's side, there's going to be a small opening here in our center section. Take the end of our handle, the side that has the rubber coating, push it through that hole, and work it to the outside of our truck. Then what we're going to do is secure it right here where this square is with a carriage bolt. We want to make sure that the handle is in line with our spring rod. So in our case, it's going on the side that's closer to the front of the truck. What we'll do is take our carriage bolt, get it in through the hole, Now on the back side, I'm going to secure it using a flange nut. And then once we have it on there hand tight, we can snug it down using a 1/2-inch socket. Now on the underside of our hitch, we're going to have 4 holes, 2 on each side, just like these, that we're going to need to drill out for our safety chain loops. So I'm going to use a 1/2-inch bit to drill those out. We're just going to repeat that same process for the 3 remaining holes. Now inside the bed with our holes drilled, we can then clean up our mess. Give our holes a shot of spray paint to help protect them. And then take our safety chain U-bolts and drop them down. Now back underneath the truck, here's where our U-bolts drop through for our safety chain hooks. Now on each end of them, we're going to put on a spring with the large end of the spring facing up towards the hitch. We're going to thread on a hex nut. Now we're going to tighten this nut down until the end of the nut sits flush with the end of the bolt. So just like that. I'm going to repeat that same process for the rest of the U-bolts. With everything reinstalled, we can now put our spare tire back in place. And that'll do it for our look at and our installation of the B&W Turnoverball Underbed Gooseneck trailer hitch with custom installation kit on our 2018 GMC Sierra 3500.